algebra 1?
The numerator is the same, so you can just plug in what number you can set
Good point. Um, good point as a start, because what's happening here, you may miss one of the solutions. So this may be one start to find out one of the solutions, especially if this will be a multiple choice. One way to think about it is to say, well, hey, my numerators here are the same. Well, I expect that my denominators are also be the same. When I'm saying the same, I expect that that 4 plus q should equal 7. If you solve, you find, by subtracting 4 from both sides, you find that your q is equal to 3, right? Now, one thing you have to keep in mind when you work with rational expressions or equations or functions is that if you have a denominator with a variable on it, you have to make sure that that denominator is not what? Is not 0, right? Which means your q has to be different than -4. Now, like I said, we found that q equals 3, and that definitely works. However, we may be losing here one of the solutions. And we have to make sure that we're not losing that. And because of that, when you have this type of equations, it's better to try to cross multiply and see what you get. You may find out that, q is the only solution, and you may find that there's another one that it's hard to see so far. So let's do the cross products. First cross product, I have q minus 3 times 7, which I can write as what? 7 times q minus 3. That's my q. I can call it epsilon, or I can call it Johnny or Jimmy. It doesn't matter. It's just a pretext to find a way to solve this algebra question. But if you don't want to see it as a q, it's not a q. That's a g. My gq will work anyway if we know how to solve this problem. So let's go with the other cross product. I have 4 plus q, or g, multiplied by q minus 3. Alright, now I'm going to do the FOIL on the right, and I will do the multiplication on the left. 7 times q is 7q, minus 7 times 3 is 21. Equals, here you have what? You can do the FOIL, you can go with the distributive property, whichever way you want to go. If you go with FOIL, you have what? The first term is 4q. Because 4 times q is 4q. Then you have what? The outer terms. 4 times negative 3 is what? Negative 12. Then what is next? Inner terms. Q times q. Q squared. And then the last terms, q times negative 3 is going to be negative 3q. What should be the next step? Well, on the right, you should simplify by combining your like terms, right? I have 4q minus 3q. That will leave me with how many q? 1. So left, 7q minus 21. Right, I'm going to put that q squared first. I have q squared plus q, because 4q minus 3q is just q, minus 12. And it seems to be a quadratic equation, right? Because of that, I will put everything on one side and leave 0 on the other side, so I will be able to solve it. And I can do that by subtracting 7q from both sides, and by adding 21 to both sides. 7q minus 7q is 0. That's an easy. You can write. I mean, don't worry about it. It's not going to happen anything. You're not going to be hurt by it. Are you okay? Do you have pencil, pen, paper?
Yeah.
Let's go for it. 21 minus 21 is 0. I have 0 on the left equals q squared minus 6q minus 12 plus 21 is going to be plus 9, right? Is it plus 9? And I have a quadratic equation. When you have a quadratic equation to solve, first thing you're looking for is to see if that's a perfect square. Is that a perfect square? Well, how do you check if it's a perfect square? If the first term is a square, and that's q squared, right? The last term is also a square. That seems to be what? 3 squared. Definitely the sign between the operation between these two is going to be negative, because it is given to me by the coefficient of the middle term here. So it should be q minus 3, and would be a perfect square if this middle term is twice their product. Is that 6q twice 3 times q? Seems to be, right? So I have q minus 3 squared, and that is 0. Which means my two solutions are what? q1 and 2 are actually equal to 1. How do you find that? Well, you know, this number squared gives me 0. It means what? That q minus 3 equals 0, which means q equals what? 3. So by the way Kylie started at the beginning on this special problem, on this particular problem, q equals 3 will be the only solution, because the other root will also be equal to 3. And you will be fine. But keep this in mind. Sometimes may not be the case. So it's better to check with the cross products also. One thing you have to make sure that 3, or whatever solutions you find, is different than your condition here, than your restriction. Q should be different than -4. Well, 3 is different than -4. You are done. This is the answer. Q equals 3. Q or G, or whichever way you want to call that variable that I'm